welcome to Good Film Hunting. My name's Riley Hardy.
And I'm Connor Reed.
All right, well, this week we have a very different movie than last week, but it sort of plays on similar themes or similar ideas. So the movie we're talking about this week is Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. And so this movie came out in 1927 and is a silent film, a pretty revolutionary film. It was one of the first movies to win awards because it was actually it was released the same year that the Oscars started.
Yeah, and actually got an Oscar for artistic quality of production, which is the only film to ever have received that. Because they just decided not to do it after that.
Yeah, it was interesting because they kind of had like two categories. Because there was another movie called Wings that won Best Feature or Best Picture or something. Yeah. But yeah, they had two categories, and then they didn't know, well, which one is better? You know, it's like we have two of these movies, but and then they just decided to drop that category the next year, and from there on, it's just been Best Picture. But so that was kind of interesting. And actually, it was the only Academy Awards ceremony that was not broadcast, was not on TV, and was not on the radio. So, but the very next year started the first radio broadcast, and I'm not actually sure when they first started televising it, but
yeah. I don't even think they called them Oscars back then either.
No, they didn't. Yeah, it was just Academy Award. I'm not sure when they started calling it the Oscars either.
Well, I just remember that it was some story that I think either someone on the board or like someone who won one was like, "Oh, it looks like my friend Oscar," and then so they just started calling it the Oscars.
Right? Yeah, for sure. So
the little statue.
Regardless, it was a revolutionary film. So the basic synopsis: it's about a man and his wife, and I'm not actually sure where they live. Just in a small rural village.
Yeah, it's in America, I think.
Okay, it's America. So they live a life with the child, and they have a maid. But the man, as he's called, doesn't actually have a name. Most of the characters don't have names, I don't think. I mean, is there any character that actually?
I can't think of anyone. Yeah.
But I think that was purposeful on the director's part. And remind me the director's name?
F.W. Murnau.
Murnau, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Which he's also fantastic. Like, this is definitely not his first foray into it. This is actually his first American film. But he also directed like Nosferatu and Faust, so
really?
He already had a big following.
I had no idea he did Nosferatu. Okay. Very cool.
Which is also fantastic, and you guys should also watch.
I still need to watch that one. Wow.
Oh.
Okay, so about a man and his wife, just kind of a family, but the man is obviously very much he's fallen out of touch with his wife, especially, and just kind of with his passion. He's kind of lost essentially, and he has a farm, and the farm isn't doing very well, and he eventually leads to the romance with another woman, an outsider from the city, who I guess she just comes to visit him, or just to visit. I don't know how she ends up.
Well, I think she just wants to go to the countryside and is just staying there and on a vacation or something like that.
Right. And so he ends up spending some time with her, and then she convinces him that they're meant to be together and that he should leave his wife and his child and move to the city. And so she decides, and I will say that there will be spoilers in this podcast. So I don't know. We won't necessarily spoil the entire movie, but there will definitely be big plot spoilers. We may spoil the entire movie. I don't know.
Most likely.
We'll see. Most likely, yeah. So the woman that he's having an affair with decides that he should move away with her, and that he should, in order for him to break his ties to the farm, he should drown his wife.
Make it look like an accident.
Make it look like an accident. And at first, the man is like repulsed and like tries to choke her, but then he just kind of falls into her embrace again. And
she just starts kissing him, and he's like, well, maybe.
Yeah, and she just kind of convinces him even further, and so he decides to do it. So he and his wife take a little boat trip, and the wife is so excited because her husband, who's been lost, who's been neglecting her, is taking her on a trip, and so she's very excited to go on this trip. The baby's going to stay with the maid. She's not going to have to worry about anything, and so they go and they start paddling, and you can tell just on this boat trip that something is off about the man. Like man, I don't know who this actor is. I'm not sure what his name is, but holy moly, he did a great job of conveying the emotions inside of him, and man, the
Yeah.
look on his face of pure like whenever he's about to do the deed, about to drown, or just
Yeah.
the look on his face, he looks very scary, and just like holy crap, who is this man?
Yeah.
You know?
He gets that classic imposing figure where they like build the shoulders up and like
Yeah.
slowly start stalking towards
Right.
the prey.
Yeah, and just the editing of that scene, it was a really good build up, and so he proceeds to attempt to drown her, although she begs for mercy, and then he decides not to. He's, I guess, convicted is the right word. I don't know, but he doesn't, and so he sits back down, and they continue back to shore. And once they hit the shore, she just runs away. From there on, it's kind of the man is chasing her, trying to plead her forgiveness and to try and get back with her and just to reconcile. That's kind of what the rest of the story is about. I would say it's kind of the reconciliation of the man and the wife, and
In the big city.
in the big city, yeah, just kind of them reestablishing their connection and their feelings for each other. The structure of the story was very interesting to me. The way it was building up. So like whenever she took off and landed their boat, I was anticipating like, okay, their reconciliation is going to be the entirety of the rest of the story. Like it'll be the culmination will be them coming back together. But that actually wasn't the case. They ended up.
It's like almost
It's like 30
immediately after.
30 minutes in to the movie, they're back together and everything's all good. And so that was
just having a good time.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, okay, where's this movie going now? It was like they've reconciled. I was just like, what else is going to happen? So
Yeah.
and so they go to various places. So they go to the city, and there's like, I guess it's like a carnival or something that's going on.
Yeah, just a big fair that's
In
there.
the street, a fair, yeah, and so they're just having a good time, and a lot of it is just like non-essential, like stuff that's really isn't doing anything to progress the story forward. We're just kind of seeing them interact with other characters, and
Well, I think it's seeing them fall in love again,
right,
instead
that's
of
kind
him
the
being, kind of soothed by the quote-unquote wicked ways of the city girl, and seeing his, farmhouse wife in the city environment, and so kind of getting that mix and really seeing what he wants. This isn't the first time I've seen this. Like, I watched this maybe 2 years ago, and I actually remembered, or I thought that it was the woman from the city that goes with him to the city. Like, she convinces him to go there.
You remembered it that wrong.
Yeah.
It's completely
Completely off.
completely false. Yeah. That's funny. And she really doesn't come. I mean, she comes back into play, I guess, near the end, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of like random inserts of her just to kind of keep her in our memories of that she's still around. It's like I just remember it being it's like, oh, there's a scene from the woman from the city again. She was like, I don't know, looking at a magazine. Is that right? No,
Yeah.
that was earlier on.
Well, I think there's other women there that are kind of like symbolic of her. Like whenever they're getting their hair cut in this salon, and this like woman comes up and is like, "Oh, you want a pedicure?" to the man, and starts like grabbing his hand, and like the wife is watching, and it's like, "Oh, I don't know how I feel about this." And
That's right. That's right. And then the obtrusive gentleman.
the guy who starts just flirting with her.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
just
it's
like-
just so comical.
He's like
'Cause
nudging
he has a
up
mustache,
closer
of course, and
starts
he's just like
pinching
look on
her.
his eye. Yeah. He's just- man, yeah. The credits to the movie are just hilarious to me. There's the obtrusive gentleman.
Right.
There's the obliging gentleman. Who's the guy they're in the carnival or something, and he's standing next to this lady, and her dress strap keeps
Picking
falling
up
down.
the strap. Yeah.
He picks it up for her like 4 or 5 separate times.
And, well,
then
it's
she
just like
looks
the
at him
left
and
one
says,
at
"Thank you."
first, and then the right one, and
Yeah.
I'm like, she
And
doesn't
then it
think
just-
this is weird at all. Like,
I know, it's like he's done it like 5 times in a row, and then she just looks at him
Yeah.
and like says, "Oh, thank you," and then
Yeah.
continues to watch.
and then he gives
then
up and
finally-
like just throws the other strap off, and,
And
she smacks him
the
in
other
the face.
strap off, and she slaps him. Oh, I just love that. It's so funny. And because it was like so random. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just it didn't really serve any purpose, but it was just funny.
Because otherwise, it's like this sweet, tender moment where like the husband and wife are dancing together, and it's like that whole falling in love again. And then it just cuts in with this weird guy just obsessed with this girl's like dress strap.
Yeah. Oh man, I laughed out loud very hard during that scene. That was funny.
Yeah.
So, I guess from there they take pictures together. That's what they do after that? I think.
Yep. Break the statue and replace it with that weird little doll head.
I was wondering what that was. It was like looked like some kind of like bouncy ball or something that had a cut in it.
I think what it was like this little like squishy toy that the photographer would use whenever there's like kids around to get their attention up at the camera.
Oh right, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So they get pictures made to kind of reestablish their newfound love for each other, and so those turn out well. And I guess from there, it just leads to them going back home, right? There aren't any consequential events in between that and them going home, I don't think, right?
No, just chasing around a pig.
Right, yeah, that lasted a long time. Honestly, that was probably one of the more boring parts of the movie. It was like, I remember kind of zoning out during that. I was like, what is this? Yeah, what is this? And so it lasted for a while, probably like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
One thing that I was pretty amazed with was the scene with them walking in the street. I'm not sure how they did this, but it was them like walking in the street, standing side by side, very like pressed together. Yeah, and all the cars kind of coming in and out. It looked like green screen to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, obviously, there wasn't green screen. Like, do you know anything about how that was made or put together? Like, I know a lot of the effects were done in camera and like outside of the lab, not even in the lab. But I'm not sure how that was done.
So I'm guessing that's probably the same thing because there's a lot of overlays in this. And what they did for the overlays was they would film, whatever was going to be like maybe in the corner of the screen. They'd put it up there, and then they literally black out the rest of the camera, so that way they could just like put the shots over one another and it wouldn't like mesh together really weird. So what I think they just did was like took one shot of the couple walking and then like blacked out the rest of the frame, and then filmed the other shots of the camera going through traffic and going through the fields, and just put the couple walking on top of that.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool because it looked very much, green screeny. I was like, how did they do that? Yeah, there were a lot of new technological advancements in this movie. I believe it was the first movie to have a soundtrack, to have like actual sound effects as opposed to just a pure musical score. So like the sound of the carnival and the fair.
Yeah. It was also the first movie where they didn't have to have like a phonograph playing the soundtrack or an actual live orchestra, because the score was inlaid with the film, which hadn't been done before.
Okay. Wow. Man, that's another thought I had during this movie. I absolutely loved the music, and I was like, oh my goodness. The thought I had was this music sounds amazing and kind of terrible at the same time. Because you can just tell like the fidelity of the recording is not very good. And part of that also might be due to the fact that it's a copy, so that the original camera negatives were lost, destroyed in a fire at Fox Studios. But that's all they have left are copies, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But just the recording systems they had back then were not very good, and so the fidelity of that orchestral score was like not really up to par. But I loved the tune, the melodies were amazing, and I was like, wow, I would love to hear an orchestra play that. I was very much impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, I almost thought that it was like this was taken from some classic opera or musical piece, and not solely recorded for the film, because it does have this grandiose matter of everything that was recorded in the past.
Right. Yeah, it was very, very impressive. I don't think it won any awards for music, but
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. Did they have that kind of category in the very first one? The very first Oscars? I'm not sure.
Well, because the Jazz Singer came out then too, like a month beforehand, so maybe they made it for that.
Anyway, to progress the story forward, they go back home. Oh, one part we forgot to mention was whenever originally the man was, deciding to drown his wife, he got 2 stacks of
The
straw.
bulrushes.
Was it straw or what was it? Sorry,
Bulrushes.
bulrushes.
So basically like reeds.
Reeds. Okay, so buoyant material so
Yeah.
that whenever
They capsize the boat.
They capsize the boat. Yeah, he'll survive because he'll have his life raft per se, or his
Yeah.
you know
Safety vest almost.
safety vest kind of thing. And so he put those in the boat, but obviously he never had to use them. And so as they sail back, they come into a storm, an incredible, a very, very intense, dangerous storm. Man, the whole time I was watching that, I was like, how did they film that? Like, it was so violent, and I was just very much amazed at how they did that. Because usually, I mean, nowadays it's either
CG.
it's either CG or it's in a huge like tank that is at movie studios that are built to create those kinds of waves and things. So I'm not even sure how they did that scene, but it was very impressive.
Yeah, I believe they also did that on a sound stage and like probably had controlled waters for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I mean, it's like impossible to just have to wait around for a storm, like especially back then with like how quickly movies needed to be made.
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
But it was just overall that the impression of that storm was felt very real and felt very authentic. So that was really intriguing to watch. It was very like, oh man, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, how's this gonna end? Yeah, and I was like, are they gonna make it out of this kind of thing? And they just get battered and battered and battered by this storm. It's like, I'm not sure how long it goes for, but eventually they get separated. The boat, it capsizes or crashes, and and then the next thing we see really is the man coming up on the shore or up onto these rocks. It's not really a shore; it's kind of some kind of a rocky grotto. It looks like.
Yeah.
We see him coming up to that, and then trying to find some safe ground. Then he makes his way back to the village. He's looking for his wife. He's like, "Where's his wife?" And they can't find her. And so he goes to the village, and they get a search party together, and they look for her, and they can't find her for a while.
Yeah. All while the woman from the city is watching from like the trees.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, she's watching, seeing the effect of her death on his face. Man, he was a very good actor. I was very impressed. And honestly, like, I've seen a few silent films, but I've never been super impressed by acting in them. They just always seem
because a lot of it is like they didn't know how to act for film, and so it was mostly theater actors, and so they'd overact and
overexpression.
Yeah,
but I thought he did very good at that. And so, man, just watching him in agony, it was agonizing for me. But and so the city girl comes back into the picture, and he sees her, and he's instantly filled with rage, and he goes and begins choking her, and
again,
and almost kills her. Choking her again. That's right. And he almost kills her, but then somebody is shouting at him, and I'm not sure who it was, but telling him that she's alive. They found her. They found his wife.
Yeah.
And so it's a very triumphant moment, and he runs to greet her, and it's just a happy time.
Yep. She's laying in the bed with the baby.
Yeah, laying in the bed with the baby. And it was a sailor, I think, who found her. It was like an old sailor fisherman.
Like a fisherman, yeah.
Yeah.
They're just sitting on the bench with like the maid, and the maid is like hugging him and kissing him. And he's like, oh, and tries to move in a bit. And his wife is like right behind him and just smacks him.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
That's funny. But yeah, I thought that guy was cool. But yeah, he was the one who found her. That's where it ends. I guess so they embrace, and then I think we see the city girl going back to the city. So she's leaving the farm, exiting his life, supposedly, forever.
Yep, and then the sun rises.
The sun rises, that's right. Sun rises, bringing it full circle. And so, wow, I loved this movie. I was very surprised at how quickly it grabbed me. I like black and white movies, and to be honest, I haven't seen very many silent films, but and this was definitely my favorite that I've seen. And so the other ones I've seen, I wasn't super engaged with, but man, I was engaged with this one, and it was very thrilling and just kind of on the edge of my seat, not like in an action sense, but like in a I don't know what's
Like you
going to
get
happen
invested
next.
into these characters.
Yeah, I was exactly. I was very invested. Into nameless characters, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Which I think that's like the whole point of it, because
Right.
it could be anyone,
It
and that's
kind of
why the
allows you-
story is so relatable.
Kind of allows you to attach yourself to those characters, yeah, in a way you
Kind of
it's
like
a little bit different.
the Man with No Name trilogy, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, right. Yeah, kind of a similar deal. But yeah, no, I love this movie. And I had never even heard of it before until Connor brought it up.
Yep.
So
Yeah, this is probably
it was
my favorite silent movie too.
Yeah, I need to watch more from this director. I need to watch Nosferatu.
You should definitely watch Nosferatu and Faust. Those are like,
Wow.
aside from Sunrise, like his two best movies.
But yeah, that's the gist of the story. I mean, we picked it, as a silent film, and there were a lot of elements to this. Almost had the silence of water. It's like combining Silence of the Lambs to The Shape of Water. No, The Shape of Water. There were just kind of some, there's the power of silence and how sometimes the absence of something can be more powerful than the thing itself. And so that's kind of one of the themes we wanted to hit on.
Yeah, our mini series we're kind of in right now about silence and how people use that in films. And so, definitely with Shape of Water, Eliza's character not being able to talk has a huge impact on the way that the film works. And I would say that this is another great example of how to use action to tell a story and not, words. Because, back then, of course, they had title cards, but F.W. Murnau hated using title cards, so he tried to use them as little as possible.
Yeah, there
There's
were barely
hardly
any in the
this.
movie. Yeah.
But you can feel the dialogue because you still see them talking, but you know what they're talking about, even if you can't hear it.
It's like, it's easy to kind of put the words in their mouth, what they're communicating to each other. It's not difficult.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was very good at that.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to watch this movie is because I think this is a perfect example of how to use silence to tell like a basic but compelling and romantic story. Because when you look at this, it's just kind of like a story that's been told throughout the centuries. But the way that this film uses these themes, it just makes it so compelling. Like you were saying, you just get tied up into these characters and you don't know their names and you never even hear their voices.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was crazy. Silence of the Lambs will be our next film. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe we'll put it on the list down the road, but
yeah,
not quite the same kind of silence.
No, definitely not. Yeah, but there's so much like technicality to this film as well. It's not all just the characters. Like there's so much that goes into the camera work and the overlays and just the way that the film is structured.
Right. It was a big feat. It was very expensive to make.
Well, because the entire city isn't on location. It's all like built on a sound stage. And so that city street costs like $200,000.
$200,000, right? Which in $1927 is a lot of money. $200,000 is a lot in the first place, but yeah, I'm not sure how much that would be with inflation, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah. And it's so convincing, too. Like, you look at it and you're like, oh, yeah, they just went to a big city and filmed this, Because there's cars and buggies driving around and tons of extras. And
yeah,
it really is a
lot of cost. Oh, yeah.
And even just the way that they use the camera, too. There's lots of, like, tracking shots and close-ups, which wasn't really prevalent in film back then. And I think this is one of the revolutionary films in that sense of making there be more purpose to camera movements and like the motion of it instead of just having a bunch of stock still shots of people moving around.
Right. Yeah. They kind of made the camera move around a lot. Like, kind of made it a character sort of kind of following the couple, like as they're walking down the street. That was probably one of my favorite shots was that we were talking about earlier with the kind of the overlays. I thought that was really, I was very impressed by it.
Yeah. I love the one when, they're still back at the farm, and the man is sitting in his bed, kind of going over the thoughts of having to kill his wife, and he had just woken her up, and she's out doing
Oh
some
yeah,
chores,
that's
and there's
right.
all these like phantoms of the woman from the city, just kind of like one giant head over his shoulder and another one in his arms, like caressing his chest, and
Oh yes, that's right.
so eerie.
It was very eerie. It was, but it was like it was cool to look at too. Yeah,
And I
it
just
was
love the
ominous.
expressiveness of everyone in the film. I mean, just because they didn't have dialogue to communicate with the audience, they just had to use so much of their emotions. Like, to me, one of the most heartbreaking scenes is whenever it's at the very beginning and the woman from the city goes over to the man's house and like whistles, and he goes out of the house right whenever he's about to have dinner with his wife, and they're like in the same room for a little bit, then she walks out, then he looks and notices her and leaves,
Oh
and
yeah,
she
yeah.
walks in like holding this bowl of soup, and she looks around, and like her facial expression doesn't really change, but she like slowly lowers the bowl, and it's just like
Yeah,
that the
puts the bowl on the
symbolism of that
table.
was so good.
Yeah, and then she sits down. Yeah, intense. This movie was intense in its emotions. Very technical film. Made a lot of achievements in
Yeah.
its production and
And they used jazz in it too, which was also pretty revolutionary whenever they're
jazz.
at the fair.
Just jazz music.
Yeah, just jazz music, because this was still in the very early stages of jazz as well, and
I guess
it was
that's
kind
true.
of
Yeah.
breaking into mainstream, and so them including like this big jazz band in there was like, not really done, except of course like
Okay.
the jazz singer, which also came out at the time. But yeah, just to
Okay.
hear that sort of music on film was just kind of unheard of beforehand.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. She won Best Actress. She was the Best Actress winner, or the first
Yeah.
Best Actress winner ever.
Yeah,
Well
what
deserved,
is
I think.
her
Well,
name?
of course, I didn't. Uh, what
Oh,
was it?
Janet Gaynor. That's it.
Gaynor. Yeah, I knew it was. Yeah, I knew it sounded similar to that. Yeah, so she was very good. I think they played off each
Yeah.
other well.
And her facial expressions are great. Like, there's some of my favorite throughout the film, actually. All the close-ups of her, whenever you just see like the desperation in her face, and
Yeah.
just knowing that her husband is out with this other woman, and
Yeah,
she can't really do anything about it, and just like the heartbreaker in her
just
eyes.
all the stuff leading up to them reconciling. Just like when he's he's taking her to these different places, like to the wedding. Oh my gosh, I was like, so that was
I
like,
teared up in that scene.
That
like,
was so
not gonna lie.
emotional. It's like he's, they're watching this couple get married, and they're thinking back on their own marriage and commitments they made to each other that have been broken, and just what he want. And it's just so obvious that he wants to reestablish this connection, but
Yeah.
she's just not there yet. But yeah, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was the turning point for them in their relationship as well. And there's this quote that the priest says to the couple that's getting married that I just like had to write down because I loved it, and it's at the just perfect timing for it. Whenever he turns to them and says, "Love her and keep her from harm," and it cuts back to the man, and he just like collapses, and it's like that is just so powerful, like. He's basically getting it shoved in his face, like all the wrong that he did to her.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, that was crazy. And then after, I guess I'm not sure if that was the first stop, or because then they went to the restaurant. I think the restaurant would have been first. But and then
Yeah,
he
because they
brings-
sit in there for a little bit.
Yeah, and, they
And she
bring
just kinda
food,
rejects
and then
him.
She tries to eat the food, and then she just like collapses on the
Breaks down.
table. It's like, what is? Yeah, it's just interesting. Like she was maybe trying to get closer to him a little bit, but she just couldn't do it. Yeah, it was an interesting scene.
Yeah. And there's so much symbolism throughout it as well. Like the tolling of the bells is kind of the change of whatever is happening in the moment. Because it starts off back in the village whenever there's the first tolling. And that's whenever the woman from the city comes up with the idea for him to capsize the boat and kill his wife. And then it tolls again right whenever they're on the lake and he's about to, do the act, and then it tells another time right whenever she forgives him for the act on their way back.
Really? I did not realize that. Good movie. Those are
Very
my
good.
notes on it. I need to watch. I really am interested in watching the other movies that were nominated for awards in that same time area or time frame
Yeah.
for the first Academy Awards. Kind of see what other stuff was coming out that year.
Ooh, there is one other point that I wanted to talk about that
Okay.
just amazed me whenever they're on the boat at the end and it getting tossed around. That I noticed like halfway through it, there wasn't any sound effects for like taken from a storm. It's all
Really?
instruments that does it. So it's like
Okay.
the timpani just like, being
Yeah.
blasted as the rolling of the waves and the slide whistle for the wind and all the flutes going. I just thought that was masterful.
Yeah.
Like, the way that they did that.
Yeah, and that's I think in lots of movies, I wouldn't say that's totally revolutionary for this film. I think for this film, that's kind of been a common thing. Like before, they were able to do a bunch of sound effects. Like that's kind of what they did. Like
Yeah.
cymbals crashing was the lightning, things like that. And
But this
yeah,
one just struck me because I didn't realize it till like halfway through it.
till halfway
you know?
through it. Yes, they did it so well. Yeah, the editing was. Yeah, I just that scene that might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Just the way that was cut together and the tension, the rising tension, and then the release was really
And
really
then
effective.
when he goes back into the house and there's that haunting shot of like the bedroom and the sun or the moon shining on the empty bed, and he just slowly walks in and it's like, oh, she's dead.
She's not there. Yeah, she's gone. Ugh. Yeah, and then just the whole 180, just the whole coming back from that, just the pure joy of getting to see her again and hold her again. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
And him almost strangling that woman from the city again.
Yeah. God.
Jeez, he's so violent.
It's kind of violent.
What is his problem?
He was very good at being big and brooding.
Menacing. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I wonder if he's played
Yeah.
many other villains.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really recognize from anything else, but who knows? I probably have seen something else with him in it.
Anyway, that's Sunrise. Go watch it. It's on YouTube.
Sunrise.
Sunrise. A tale? No, not a tale. A song of two humans.
A Song of Two Humans. Yep. Also, one of the 12 movies chosen by some committee. It was like the 12 movies with perfect cinematography. And I wholeheartedly agree with that for this film.
Perfect
because it just
cinematography.
works so perfect.
That's a statement. Wow. That's cool. Yeah. I wonder. I need to find that list. Watch the other movies.
Yeah,
Anyway.
they're all very good choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. This has been another installment.
Yep.
Good film hunting.
Thanks to John Skinner for the graphic as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go John. It's pretty rocking. I love it. So hope you'll join us again. We'll see you next time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See you then.